Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you back to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. We are, of course, looking into the Billy Meyer case. I'm going to be bouncing around a little bit today, different topics. I'm reading different things. I'm reading Contact 238, a fantastic book called The Psyche, which if you contact Michael Horn, you can possibly get a copy of. Now, this book kind of goes into the details of the spiritual consciousness and the physical, the material consciousness, and it is extremely interesting. We'll talk more about that later. There's another book called The Way to Live, which Michael Horn is also selling. I think his website is theyfly.com. Another fantastic book of Billy's is called The Might of Thoughts, Macht der Gedanken, which is a book I'm almost done my third trip through, trying to wrap my mind around everything there. One of the topics that I've been reading about, again, I'm going through the Psyche the second time, is trying to understand a little bit more about the memory and our memory and what goes on there. Let me read a little section here. It says, the memory also has to be seen as a process simultaneously carried by many nerve cells and their synapses. Thereby, the preservation appears to function similar to that of a hologram. The information becomes stored through overlapping interference of two or more information circles. For example, through the overlapping of what is seen with what is heard, the overlapping of what is read with what is already known. The theory explains why learning becomes easier when several input channels participate at the same time. These input channels have been equated to the senses by the scientists, as well as repetitions would accentuate the hologram and make the memory content more easily retrievable. Hereby, the attention represents a filter, so to speak, which allows through only the stimuli that belong to that currently under consideration. The hypothesis that electrical occurrences of the ultra-short-term memory would cause a genotype substance, DNA, to create carrier substances, RNA, and to synthesize proteins. So anyway, these proteins have to be synthesized in order for physical memory to take place. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about memory a little bit later. We'll talk about short-term memory, long-term memory. But one of the things that we are born with in our subconsciousness is a memory of the predecessor personalities, the memories of the predecessor personalities. Now, typically, at our level of evolution, we cannot recall those memories. And that's for good reason, because it would be difficult to keep this life in order when you were reliving the past experiences of other lives. What happens when the spirit form comes into the body of the child at 21 days after the sperm fertilizes the egg, 21 days after that, a spirit form is pulled out of the spiritual realm and put into the superior colliculus of a child. The superior colliculus is that area of the midbrain that controls your sight, your gaze, and the spirit form is no bigger than the head of a pin, and it sends out energy throughout the whole body in a lattice structure. It starts the heart to beat. Consciousness evolution begins then. And what also comes in is the material consciousness. Now, we all have a spiritual consciousness and a material consciousness. The part of our material consciousness that comes in, this whole consciousness block comes in from this other area of the Maya material called the overall consciousness block. So when your spirit form was in the spiritual realm, which is kind of like a energy band around our planet, it's in a slightly different dimension than ours. And after you die, your spirit form comes out of your body. It goes into this other realm. And your material consciousness, that includes your memories, your consciousness, your subconsciousness, your unconsciousness, all those go into this other area that they just call the overall consciousness block. And I'm assuming that is in the spirit realm as well. And what happens is there's a process which goes on where the spirit form absorbs the part of the past life memories that are the highest, most, it's the part like love and virtue and patience. They're called evolutive forms. And the spirit form absorbs those evolutive forms, and it takes those memories and it places them into the subconsciousness of the new material consciousness, because a new material consciousness is created in the spirit realm before the next incarnation occurs. So deep locked in our subconsciousness, deep in the memories, are that wisdom of our predecessor personalities. Now, typically we don't recall these things we've learned exactly. Sometimes that seems to happen. Not until we get to the fifth stage of evolution, which is the age of recognitions, do we really recall those things. Now, we reincarnate, and it says in the psyche here, about 42 million years in the first 5 stages of evolution. We will reincarnate into a material body for about 42 million years. And most spirit forms on the earth now, most human spirit forms, are about 4 to 5 million years old. We have a few other, probably a couple 100,000 on earth, spirit forms that came here from other worlds, and they traveled in ships through a form of technology, and they died on the earth, and they became part of the reincarnational cycles on earth. So those spirit forms are between 8 and 12 million years old. So they're a little bit older than the rest of the spirit forms here on the earth. Now that in itself is a very long story that I don't think I'm going to go into particularly right now. But the point is this, that with each lifetime you gather these evolutive values and you evolve your consciousness a little bit more. And you take with you those past life memories, those things where you grew, where you evolved. The spirit form kind of takes those evolutive values, your love, your patience, your knowledge, your wisdom, all those virtues that you developed in your previous life then are turned into kind of a neutral energy and absorbed by the spirit form. And the spirit form grows stronger with each incarnation that way. Now, a spirit form has to spend a certain amount of time in the spirit realm to process these previous life memories and these experiences. One of the unfortunate things that's happening in this time of high population is spirit forms are being pulled back in too soon. And that causes kind of people are being born and they're before they're ready to be born. And that causes people to be in a kind of an unbalanced and uncomfortable state. They probably haven't processed all their previous life memories. So spirit forms come in and in an unnatural way because of the circumstances on our earth. Everything in the universal, in the creation, maintains a certain kind of balance for things to work properly. And that's why our thinking should always be neutral positive, always in balance. And one of the big things we're plagued with here on the earth is rubbish in our consciousness. I do it. And particularly if there's some issue that you're trying to figure out, you're trying to work on some issue that bothers you, we often circulate these negative repeating thoughts which cause internal conflict, which drain our energies and keep us from enjoying life, keep us from showing initiative. Because when you go into this kind of repetitive obsession with some problem, some issue, some thought, it tends to cause you to lose initiative, and you'll lose satisfaction, and you'll lose energy. It's a very bad trap to fall into. So, one of the importances of the spiritual teachings is learning to control our thoughts and understanding our memory, understanding how the memory, what role the memory plays. As I said earlier, there is a short-term memory. We have an ultra-short-term memory that receives information which is retrievable of up to about 20 seconds. We have a short-term memory as a rule which stores information for a couple of hours. And you have to be careful because there are certain antibiotics which will screw up the short-term memory. Pyromycin is one. There's also the long-term memory, and the long-term memory comes into play, and it requires you to have protein synthesis to have the long-term memory work correctly. The memory is situated in the cerebrum, in the area called the hippocampus. And let me read what it says here in the psyche. What is likely to be scientifically proven is that the cells of the cerebral cortex are responsible in special form for the preservation of conscious memory contents. So the cerebral cortex is where that memory is. It's the hippocampus, actually, which is involved in the transfer of all the information from the short-term memory into the long-term memory. And so I was corrected there. The hippocampus is involved in the transfer of the short-term memory into the long-term memory. Now, I've said before that you have a material consciousness and a spiritual consciousness. And the material consciousness is controlled by a factor called the psyche. The psyche controls the thoughts and the feelings of the material consciousness. The spiritual consciousness is controlled by something called the Gemut in the German. And the Gemut controls the thoughts and the feelings associated with the spiritual consciousness. So the spiritual consciousness is what survives many, many lifetimes. And then there does seem to be two kind of memory forms. Yet the two memory forms have nothing to do with one another because they are ordered into their own consciousness forms, and they have no direct contact with one another. Therefore, the spiritual memory, we actually have a spiritual memory, is solely and exclusively assigned to the spiritual consciousness. What did Semyase say about the spirit? She says, every person has within them a spirit that does not sleep, that doesn't die, that records all your thoughts and your impulsations, and it will tell you if your thinking is right or wrong if you've learned to pay attention to it. So in the spirit form, in the spiritual consciousness, is therefore the spiritual memory, and it's solely and exclusively assigned to the spiritual consciousness, whereas the material memory belongs to the block of the material consciousness. This explains why the material consciousness, therefore, takes no journey to the beyond and would be unable to do so. So the material consciousness does not, this is kind of hard to really wrap your mind around, but your material consciousness ceases to exist at the death of the physical body. However, those evolutive forms, those memories, they are pulled into the overall consciousness block and processed in between lifetimes. But as a whole, your body dies and your material consciousness dies too. Your spiritual consciousness, the spirit form, leaves the body, and it brings with it the part of the material consciousness that's going to be processed in the spiritual realm between lifetimes. But it does essentially cease to exist at the death of the physical body. So I guess only a portion of it, or only that which needs to be processed, goes over. Each time you reincarnate, you get a new personality. And a new material consciousness. But we do, fortunately, maintain the memories, even if they're subconscious, even if we can't really access them, we do maintain the memories of the previous lifetime. And we go through stages of evolution. We go through something called primitive life. The second stage is rational life. The third stage is intelligent life. The fourth stage is real life. The fifth stage you could call life and creational wisdom. That's where people become what they call the JHWH or the Ishwish. It's the last stage of the material body. So the first 5 stages of incarnation, we go about 42 million years to get through those stages. And then we go into a half spiritual, half physical stage. That's the 6th stage, and we're there for quite many millions of years. And then we go finally into the pure spiritual realms. And that's when you don't have a physical body anymore. You're still alive. You're still in the physical universe, my understanding is, to a certain degree. There's a group called the High Council. They call it the High Council, some group from Andromeda Galaxy, evidently, that are half physical, half spiritual human beings, and they're at this 6th stage of evolution. And the Plejaren consult with these people, and they actually consult with these people about things that are going on Earth and get their advice about things that are going on Earth. Now, there's a very ancient spirit form, and I talked about the last show. It's called Nokodemion or Nokodemion. It's 9.6 billion years old, and it has incarnated as a 78 and 79-year-old man in Switzerland. It's incarnated before on the earth. It's been Enoch, Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, and Muhammad. And each time it lives, it teaches an ancient universal teaching called the teaching of the Spirit. Now, this spirit form has been through all the evolutionary levels and actually came back down to incarnate in the physical body. This spirit form, 9.6 billion years old, is older than the Earth. Our Earth became solid 5 billion years ago, and it's one of the older planets in the Milky Way galaxy. In our space-time configuration. So this spirit form did not incarnate first on the Earth. It incarnated, according to the contact notes anyway, in some place called the Lyran Galaxy, which is 3 billion light years from Earth. And it's been through all these evolutionary levels, and it's come back, and it periodically comes back on certain worlds and certain planets to do kind of a spiritual mission. And as Asket mentions in Contact 31, she talks about the fact that Earth humans are connected with other terrestrial life forms. And part of Earth humanity also came here in the ancient past by ships through space travel. And they died on the Earth. And this ancient spirit form also got here one way or another. Could have been on a ship, I don't know, to tell you the truth at this point. I'll have to continue studying, maybe I can find that out. But here on the Earth, it's been Enoch, who his writings have been very distorted. The real Enoch's writings are not like the Book of Enoch. His original name was Henoch, and there were multiple Henochs incarnated on the Earth. What we have today in Contact 215 are what's called the Henoch prophecies, which are prophecies particularly about the United States and the Earth and some of the things that really appear to be going on right now, like the fall of France by Islamic invasion. We see the women in Germany being raped by the roaming hordes and gangs of the Islamic peoples. So we're in a real mess here on the Earth, and it's because we no longer understand what the creation is, and we no longer understand what the spiritual teachings are all about. And we have religions which have gone so far astray from the understanding of what the spiritual life is and what the real importance of our life is. You see, wisdom is a kind of knowledge that produces energy. And when you produce the energy associated with wisdom, you help the whole creation to evolve. So it's very important that you gain as much wisdom as you can in your current lifetime. And in order to do that, one of the things that you have to be sure to do is read, but don't, as much as possible, don't read online. Reading online actually destroys your psyche. It destroys the function of your brain. It has a horrible effect. Let's read here in Contact 543. But we're on the photo book, then I would have a further question concerning what you said on the 7th of July at the 542nd official talk regarding electronic books. You wanted yet to give a further explanation after the end of the official talk, but unfortunately that was lost in our subsequent conversation. Ptah is one of Billy's contacts. Ptah said, yes, I remember. To the explanation, I wanted to add that the reading of electronic books for the consciousness activity in the physical brain is extremely harmful. And right now when I'm reading this to you, I'm reading a printed copy. Now I also have an electronic page of something else on the page as well. It'd be better if I had printed out both of them. And let me go on and read what Todd says here. He says, namely, if by the reading of electronic data only this is included, however not processed in good measure through intellect, rationality, and logic, then slowly but surely occurs a consciousness poverty and a consciousness deterioration. So reading things online actually degrades your consciousness. There also appears, however, a gradual deterioration of the brain as well. And the brain, I think, actually gets smaller. Let's read on. In which case, a process of brain degradation occurs, as well as an increasing body weight. Don't ask me how. But that's also true. And aggressiveness. Have you noticed people that spend a lot of time online? They'll be real grouchy and real nasty. You run into these people on the internet sometimes. And it also leads to a gradual loss of intellect. So, likewise, all of these negative phenomena forms also apply to all other electronic media of any kind when the necessary consciousness work is transferred to this and there is no more determining self-controlling, logical, intellectual, and rational consciousness activity. So try to print out the Meyer material. Try to get the books. Try to get away from reading online. There is an addiction with being online, and I'm fighting it a bit myself as well. So it's very bad for children. But the purpose of our life is to gather wisdom, and it takes many, many incarnations to do that. And that's also, it's a good thing, but it's a challenging thing as well because, despite what the religions teach, there really is not a heaven and there really isn't a hell. And the universal consciousness that exists is really not a God per se, not the way it's depicted in our religions. Because what's required of an evolving spirit form is personal responsibility. Because you are in charge of your own life. You're in charge of the circumstances in your own life. And good thinking leads to good feelings. Good feelings lead to good habits. Good habits lead to good circumstances, because through good habits, you bring about the good circumstances in your life through your own hard work. And trying to maintain a neutral, positive attitude while you're going through your daily life and through your work is very, very important. Because the universal consciousness thinks, if you could say it thinks, I don't even know that that's the right term. Its mental, spiritual, intellectual activity is neutral, positive. So you're aligning yourself with the universe if you are not too positive and not too negative, but maybe just a little positive, just kind of neutral as much as possible. And from neutrality comes the ability to meditate and maintaining a relaxed mental attitude. If you can meditate and focus on clearing your mind, one of the exercises that you can do in meditation is learning to steer your thoughts. The best thing is if you can completely clear your mind of all thoughts and just focus on an image. You can look at like a light bulb this way. You can look at a flickering candle. You can look into a fireplace and clear your mind as much as possible. Now, when you're laying down and relaxing, one thing you can do is learn to steer your thoughts. If you're having trouble clearing your mind completely, just to start to steer your thoughts, what you can do is pretend you're walking around in your house and imagine the room you're in, then walk up the stairs, go into your living room, open the door, walk into your bedroom, go into your restroom, walk back downstairs, come out your front door, go down the street, and go off in the woods in your favorite spot. Anyway, by doing that, it's a little mental exercise. You'll find yourself go into a neutral state, a neutral positive state, and you're learning to guide and control your thoughts. And that's one of the things you want to do, is learning to control your thoughts. Don't let your thoughts just run out of control. Sometimes it's rather strange, but feelings tend to follow thoughts. What happens when your thoughts are out of control is they become automatic and they repeat, and they particularly come from the unconscious mind or the subconscious mind. And that's where your thoughts race out of control. An addict lives in this state habitually. They're in that state of addiction. So their thoughts are unconsciously always going back to whatever their addiction is, whether it's sex or alcoholism or drugs or sports or whatever their addiction is. They're continually driven by that addiction. So in order to take control of your life and in order to evolve your consciousness, you have to become aware of what your thoughts are, and you have to develop the ability to guide and steer and nurture good thoughts. Take the time to try to repeat some good thoughts. If you had a good feeling in the day, when you're laying down, when you're relaxing, when you're meditating, or before you go to sleep, try to recall that good feeling that you had. And if you think about it, there'll be a thought that preceded that good feeling. And think about that thought. And if you have a thought there, chances are you had a mental image. And try to form a consciousness picture. Like right now, I'm forming a consciousness picture of one of my cats because I had a good feeling about her earlier today when I looked at her. So I see my little female calico cat in my consciousness picture. And by doing that, you can relive a good feeling. You see, good thoughts lead to good feelings, which lead to good habits, which lead to good circumstances in your life. Your consciousness is like a garden. You've got to nurture the good thoughts and pull up the weeds, throw out the bad thoughts. You want to maintain a neutral, positive frame of mind. And in order to evolve your consciousness, you'll have to limit your time with electronic media. Electronic media is destroying the consciousness of the people on Earth. The consciousness of the people on Earth is being destroyed also from being away from nature. You should think of nature as like your mother. You are connected with all things in nature. And the giant problem of overpopulation is ruining nature. And that's one of the other big problems we're having on the Earth, is our gigantic overpopulation. And I know you've heard this before. You've heard that there's mathematically plenty of space on Earth. Well, the problem with population is not space. You could move everyone easily, for example, into the area of the South Pole. But the problem is it's 30 to 40 to 50 below zero there. No one's going to want to live there. People are gravitated to the warmer climates, the moderate climates, where there's fresh water, and that's where the trees are. And we're destroying the trees on Earth and all plants at an incredible rate. As we wipe out the forests in Africa, as we burn the rainforest in South America, we're creating intense weather on the Earth. We're upsetting all the natural processes. The forests moderate the climates. And as our population grows, we destroy the forests. And there's a place close to where I work, is a beautiful place. Not far from where I work, just one exit down, I go to work out at lunchtime, and there's this beautiful wooded area on the right side as I get off at the exit. Now they've destroyed half of it. They're building something else, and this is what's happening all over the earth. This affects us psychologically too. As we see nature die, deep in our subconscious is that feeling of dread, because we know we're doing something wrong that's going to have a bad effect on us, something that's going to come back on us. The destruction, you might as well be taking a knife and sticking yourself in the thigh when you play a role in destroying nature, because it's going to come back to you. It's coming back to us in droves. And all of this imbalance that we see around us, all the insanity, is because people no longer understand what the creation is. The creation is all of the universe that we live in. Everything is interconnected. So our policy should not be just live and let live, but live and help live. And the idea and the concept of love is that everything is interconnected. You see, love is the primary thought pattern, the primary law, the primary creational natural law in our universe. The incredible splendor of nature is the visible expression of the love of creation, and we are destroying the visible expression of the love of creation. And if you still have enough empfinden, the fine sensitive feeling, you can still perceive the radiating love of creation. And as we destroy nature, we are destroying that which radiates love to us. You see, do you think a concrete building is going to radiate love? No. In fact, just the opposite. You see how important it is that we understand how things work in the universe. And we don't kill in degeneracy. All life has value. Compassion, empathy, moral reasoning should tell us we shouldn't kill unless we have to. If we have to kill, we have to kill. But you have to remember that all parts of nature are important. All life forms are important. And you should take responsibility around you to help those life forms, whether they're plants, whether they're animals, or whether they're people. And that's what love is. You see, love is not about romantic things, as much as we like that sort of thing. Love is really recognizing that you're part of an interconnected web of life. Trees, plants, bushes, everything that crawls and flies on the earth is a life form with a spirit form. And these spirit forms are on a journey through time which involve many, many lifetimes. And that death is just the passage into the spiritual realms. And all of these creatures are connected by psychic vibrations. And you can see that if you go into the forest, you can watch the birds move together in unison on a dime, turning together. Listen to the crickets, the cicadas. Listen to the birds sing. All of these creatures are aware of one another, and they're a part of the indescribable splendor of nature, which is the visible expression of the love of creation. And you shouldn't think of it as a god. because it's a super intelligence that is neither good nor evil. It hasn't created the universe in order to send people to a heaven or a hell. It's created a universe so that your spirit form can evolve over millions and millions of lifetimes to gather to a point of high wisdom where you can bring your wisdom back to creation in the final stage when you merge back to creation. That's the meaning of our life. That is the purpose of our life. Heaven or hell per se is a state of mind that you create. And if you learn these key points to be able to control your thinking, then you can stop that hell that you sometimes go through and that we all go through. And the hell is our uncontrolled thoughts, which rotate and rotate. You are in control of your own life. You are the master of your own destiny. Good thoughts lead to good feelings, which lead to good habits. It's like an equation. Good habits lead to good circumstances. So no matter how difficult a situation that you face, if you take the initiative, and initiative is so important, take the initiative to go one step at a time to solve that problem, because that problem is put in your life so that you can evolve your consciousness. Now, I wanted to play a clip about population. And maybe I'll play a couple clips about population. And this is, how do we control human overpopulation?
The planet that we all live on is a big place, but we are very quickly overcrowding it. Many people don't want to even acknowledge the problem that is growing around every one of you watching this video. But planet Earth, our home, in some places already has too many human inhabitants, and the world's population continues to increase. So what will happen when the world becomes overpopulated? Well, no animal species can survive without enough food, water, shelter, and certain other resources, and human beings are no different. However, this kind of world already exists in third world countries. So how do we stop this from happening in our own countries? Imagine your towns or cities overflowing with people trying to survive, trying to eat and feed their families. People would fight to get the resources they need. Crime would rise and your streets would look like you were living in a movie scene. Human overpopulation occurs when the number of people in a group exceeds the carrying capacity of the region that they occupy.
Interesting. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we're seeing on the Earth right now in regards to this. And some of these population statistics and related information come from Frosty Wooldridge's book called America on the Brink. And by the way, I will have Frosty Wooldridge on the show tonight, 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern. The show is going to start at 8 p.m. Eastern, and that's on freedomslips.com in Studio B. Ohio Exopolitics will first talk to Alfred Weber from 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern, and then Frosty Wooldridge from 9 to 10 p.m. So here's what Frosty has to say about overpopulation. Roughly 4 million people are born on the street and die on the street in India every year. Think about that. These are 4 million homeless people that are dying on the street. So I don't know how many homeless people they have, but there's so many that 4 million die every year. 18 million people starve to death every year in the world. The world population grows by about 77 million people annually. There are 9,000 newborns over the number of deaths. Now, that clip talked about certain areas of the earth which are very overpopulated. One of those is Bangladesh, a country the size of Iowa. It has a population of 167 million. I think that's more people than currently live in Russia. I have another interesting clip here by David Suzuki, and he speaks about overpopulation.
You know, there are a lot of things that we can fix in this world. We can do something about. We can design the cities that we live in, the kinds of houses we live in, the market, the economy, currency, how many trees we're going to cut, how many fish we're going to catch. Those things human beings can manage and control because we create them and do them. But some things are facts of life we have to live with. The speed of light, gravity, entropy, the first and second laws of thermodynamics. Those are things that we have to accept and work ourselves around. And there is another one that is absolutely crucial. It's a mathematical reality called exponential growth. If something is growing at 1% a year, it'll double in 70 years. 2% a year, it'll double in 35 years. 3% a year in 24 years. 4%, 17 and a half years. Anything growing exponentially will double in a predictable length of time. Now I'm going to show you why all of this stuff about we got to keep growing, keep the economy growing, we've got to keep everything growing, is ultimately suicidal. I'm going to give you a system analysis.
So we on the earth are on a suicidal path. And one of the reasons that I do this show is to help us so that we can get off this suicidal path. Because I don't know about you, but I'd like us to not have to go through some of the hell that we're going to evidently have to go through to learn these lessons. So one of the ways to snap yourself out of a difficult situation, particularly where your thinking is concerned, is to broaden your perspective and broaden your view of things. And that's why I think studying extraterrestrials and studying exopolitics and studying the universe is very good because it broadens our perspective. I talked a little bit earlier about extraterrestrial groups and extraterrestrial peoples and the fact that Billy's spirit form had lived as a human on other worlds in the ancient past, and that his spirit form is 9.6 billion years old, which is older than our Earth even. Well, I'd like to talk about a group, or a man particularly, called Ashtar Sheran. And this is discussed in Contact Report 38. And if you go to the www.futureofmankind.co.uk, you can find Contact 38. And let me read here a quick synopsis of what this is about. And this is Quetzal, who's one of Billy's contacts, talking about something called the Giza intelligences, who are also called the Bafad, and their specific influence on the Earth peoples. And it talks about their ongoing influences also on the people of Aryan and Hebrew descent. Now, the Giza intelligences are no longer around, but they were around until like the middle 1970s, or the late 1970s. So let me continue here. However, in 1975, Quetzal did not have a complete understanding of the situation with the extraterrestrial Arusiak, also known as Ashtar Sheran. We include here the following quote from Guido Musburger's book, published in 2004, And Still They Fly, to provide an update on this individual. It indicates that Arusiak was still up to his evil ways until his end in 1983. Ashtar Sheran is the pseudonym for the extraterrestrial leader Arusiak. He was the cousin of the last boss of the Giza intelligences, Kamagal II, who was striving for world domination. Ashtar Sheran was active on Earth in a negative and criminal way on behalf of Kamagal II and his followers up to the year 1937. Sometime in 1983, Ashtar Sheran and his followers were killed during a failed attack against the Timors, Askit's planetary nation from our neighboring DAL Universe. Following the natural laws of creation, those who died in the DAL Universe will have to incarnate there. Since Ashtar Sheran's physical body is dead, and his spirit form exists in the DAL Universe. No telepathic or otherwise communication can take place with him or with those who exist in our DER and universe. Okay. So I know there's some people out there who probably don't know who the Giza intelligences are, and there are probably some of you who have heard this many, many times. But our Great Pyramid is 73,000 years old. Far, far below that Giza Plateau are these old cubicle constructions, which are also about 73,000 years old. In the ancient past, there were a group of extraterrestrials who went underground there, and they set up a headquarters. They somehow got a extraterrestrial large spacecraft under there, along with some smaller ships, and Billy was allowed to go down there with Asket. They used some kind of technology which made them invisible, and they traveled down these long, dark corridors and went far below the Giza Plateau into these old cubicle constructions. And down there, Billy saw a hallway which appeared like it was lit from everywhere and nowhere. At the same time, he saw an ancient spacecraft, and he saw what looked like religious artifacts from the crucifixion of Christ. A crucifix, a thorn of crowns, a nail with blood on it. And what was going on there is there was some plan that these Giza intelligences were going to bring these artifacts forward as if they were directly from the original crucifixion. But this was not true. You see, the Giza intelligences have affected the people of the earth for thousands of years, and they used to rule the earth, or certainly parts of the earth. There was a whole lineage of bloodthirsty tyrants on the earth. They descend from a man named Eris the Barbarian, who was here during the time of Atlantis and Lemuria. His 11th descendant, Eris the 11th, many, many generations after the death of Eris, Eris the 11th came back to the earth after the fall of Atlantis and Lemuria, and he set himself up as a leader over the earth, and he was a tyrant. And he had a son, and I believe his son was named Jehave, and then this lineage actually led down to the Giza intelligences. Jehave was killed by his son, Jehovin, and Jehovin was thrown out of power. I believe the son that threw him out of power. And, these usurpings of all these monarchies occurred after, centuries. So Erisame finally became the power. And he went, at that time, underground. And that's the official Giza intelligences, and they're also called the B'Phath. And then I believe after Erisame came a man named Hen. Meyer Material said he is the Jehovah of the Old Testament. One of the things he did was destroy Sodom and Gomorrah with nuclear weapons. He was eventually pushed out of power by Kamagal I. And these guys lived for centuries, okay? And although their lifespans were dwindling for one reason or another while they were on Earth, probably also because they were not living according to creational natural laws. So finally we got down to Kamagal II there, and Kamagal II eventually was killed, and that's where I was talking about Ashtar Sheran. Ashtar Sheran was the cousin of the last boss of the Giza intelligences. And you might hear other people in UFO communities talking about Ashtar Sheran. That story is rather complicated. Most people consider Ashtar Sheran a good guy. He certainly didn't start out that way. He was a part of the Giza intelligences, and his real name is spelled Aruseak, Arusek. So that's kind of a 30,000-foot view or higher view of the Giza intelligences. One other interesting thing that went on during this time, and boy, we're running close on time here, is about 1939, Adolf Hitler became influenced by the Giza intelligences, particularly through the Thule Society. And I believe the guy's name was Hermann Steinschneider. Influenced Hitler. Up until that point, Hitler had been impulsed by the Plejaren, and he had the opportunity to be a very strong force for good in the world. He had great potential to be good and very helpful in the evolution of the Earth peoples. But this Hermann Steinschneider, who went by another name at the time, influenced him via these Giza intelligence also into the path that eventually led into World War II and the 60 million people being killed. So these extraterrestrials far below the Giza Plateau have been negatively influencing the people of the Earth for quite a long time. If it ever seems like the world is in a daze, well, it is. It has been influenced. But the Giza intelligences have been pushed off the Earth. The one person there, Ashtar Sheran, was killed. He'll be reincarnating in the DAL Universe. So, pretty much, people of the Earth now, we're on our own. And that's where personal responsibility kicks in. Now, thankfully, we have on Earth one of the oldest spirit forms, probably the oldest spirit form currently reincarnating. I think I can say that without any doubt. And the spirit form of Edward Albert Meyer, Nokodemion, who is a teacher, a prophet, and I think the last incarnation of the sevenfold incarnation, starting with Enoch, going to Elijah, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Emmanuel, Muhammad, and now Edward Albert Meyer. And one of the main purposes of his life is to get in written form the spiritual teachings. And one of the books of the spiritual teachings, which is very important, is a book called The Way to Live, which in the German is Die Art zu Leben. And in the less than 2 minutes that we have left, I want to read this to you. A truthfully wise human being nurtures 7 things regarding the human being. First, she is modest in his or her leading of life. 2, she is modest in regard to his fellow human beings. 3, she is deferential and respectful in dealing with and in the duty in regard to his fellow human beings and all life forms. Let me read that again. He or she is deferential and respectful in the dealing with and in the duty in regard to his fellow human beings and all life forms. He or she is truthfully magnanimous towards his fellow human beings and life forms. She truly is generous to his fellow human beings. She is fair and honest in the dealing with and the regarding of duty regarding his fellow human beings. Well, folks, we're out of time. Join us on freedomslips.com this evening. You've been listening to Ohio Exopolitics. I'm your host, Mark Snyder. Have a great afternoon.